Welcome back again. In this lesson, I will talk to you about a split view controller. And a split view controller is some sort of a controller that breaks your screen into two separate parts where each part is controlled by a different view controller. It is originally designed to be a controller for having table views within larger screens. That's the screen that you see when you open your email application on an iPad, that you have a table view controller on the left side and then the body of your email on the right side of the screen. You could do that even on iPhone when you rotate your iPhone and you keep it in the landscape mode and you go to your email application. You will have a lot of table view cells on the left side of the application and the right side shows you the actual thread of different emails. So first I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of how it could work for an application such as email, and then I'm going to show you the details of it, how it is actually put together. So I'm going to go to Xcode, and in here I'm going to start a new application, and this part you don't need to do because it's just a demonstration. I'm not going to explain how it works because we have a whole section dedicated to table view controllers and collection view controllers. But for now, in a new application, I'm going to choose master detail as opposed to what we usually do. And I'm going to say this application is actually called temp. That's a naming convention I have for whenever I know I'm going to delete something really soon. And if we run this application, we will end up having a table view controller, which is something that we will study in the future, but we will also have a split view controller. Let's see how the two of them, they work. So if I rotate this simulator now, that is by pressing command and arrow buttons, or going to hardware, rotate left or rotate right. If I do that, we will see that we have this screen where I press on the master, another view controller appears, and I can press on that little button. Maybe I can make this a little bit larger as well. And I will have these table view cells in here. Each of this is called a cell. And when I tap on them, that content appears on a different view controller, which is the essence of having a split view controller. A screen is a split between this view controller, the one that we call master, and the other one, which is called detail. Now, if you're using a smaller device such as iPhone, the master essentially slides over the detail. And if you're working with a larger device such as an iPad, then the master view controller will be permanently there on the left side of the screen. So that's the design of it. Now let's go ahead and see how they do this thing and what we could use it for. Like I said, it's primarily used for this purpose, for having a table view, and it's kind of a built-in feature there, but it kind of helps if we know how they built it. So if we need it, we could make adjustments to it. So I'm going to go back to Xcode. I'm going to stop this application and start a new one. I'm going to call this one to be a single view application. I'm going to call it my split, or just a split view controller app. So that's my split view controller app. And the moment it loads, I'm going to head into my storyboard and design the split view controller. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this view controller. I'm going to say I have a split view controller, which is somewhere up here, this one. And the moment you drag a split view controller, it's going to bring a lot of stuff with it. I'm actually going to delete everything except for this one, which is the master of the split view controller that shows the master view controller. So I'm going to delete the root view controller, the navigation controller, and this other view controller. So we are left with this one, which is of the type split view controller. Now I want to build everything on my own. I want to see how these different things are actually connecting to each other. So I know for a fact that the split controllers, they require at least two view controllers, a master view controller and a detailed view controller. So let's go ahead and add those two. I'm going to say I have one view controller. Let's make this one be perhaps a brown color. So I'm going to say this is my master view controller. And then I'll have another view controller. I'm going to put it in here. Let's say this one is maybe, let's select this color. Maybe it is pink. So that's going to be my details view controller. And now I'm going to go ahead and select this view controller, hold Control and drag over here and say the relationship is master view controller for the brown one And I'm going to repeat the same process for the pink, except that this time I'm going to say the relationship is detail view controller. So now each of them is one of the view controllers of this split view controller. And since I don't have an entry point to this storyboard, I'm going to select the split view controller, say it is the initial view controller. So by now we have the setup, and surprisingly my pink view controller is showing me a navigation bar, and that is because the design of a split view controller expects this view controller to be a navigation controller. So it's best if we embed the pink one within a navigation controller. So I'm going to select the pink one, that is my details view controller, and say editor embed in a navigation controller. And that's just like the bare basics of having a split view controller that has one master view controller, one detail view controller. Now I'm going to run the application up until this point just so that we can see what we get so far. So now that my app is loaded, I can see that on the left side I'm seeing the brown view controller, that was the master one, and on the right side I see the pink one. This is obviously only visible when my application is in the landscape mode. If I rotate back, I will only see the master view controller. And that's a very good design, because in a portrait mode, it kind of doesn't make sense to see a split in the screen. There isn't enough space for doing a split, a vertical split essentially. So let's go ahead to code and see what else we could change in here. Something that is quite important, and you might have noticed, is because each of these screens are taking a part of the size of this total screen, it makes sense that we set auto layout and constraints for anything that we make in here. So I'm going to keep that in mind. So the first thing I want to do is I want to be able to have something in my master view controller that controls something in my detailed view controller. So let's say we have a button here in the brown that controls the text somewhere on the pink. And if we manage that, then we can manage anything similar as well. So I'm going to go in here to the brown one, say I have a button. So let's find the button. I'm going to place it here, say it is like that. It also has a pink background color, so it kind of says what it does, and says change it to something. And then I'm going to set the constraints for it: top space, leading space, trailing space, and a height. I'm also going to go ahead into the pink view controller and add a label. So in here, I'm going to say I have a label. I'm going to place it in here. Say my label is something like that. It has a different background color, maybe white, so we can see what's going on. A bit of a larger text. It has the same height always. It has a trailing and a leading space. Because it tries to intrinsically find the size of it or infer the size of it from the text, it kind of shrinks it. So we have to go to the auto layout and manually change this number to whatever we want, which is 16 in this case. And I'm going to say it has a top space with a safe area. So now we have the label as well. The next thing we need to do is we need to have two view controller classes. I already have one, which is the view controller. I'm going to delete that. Say I don't need that one. What I do need is two new ones. One of them is going to be Command N, Cocoa Touch class. It's going to be a UI view controller. It's going to be pink view controller. And then I'm going to add another one, Cocoa Touch class. I'm going to call it brown view controller of the type UI view controller. So now I have two view controllers, each of them for one of the view controller outlets in my storyboard. I'm going to go to the pink one, say the class for it is actually pink view controller. I'm going to select the brown one, say the class for it is obviously the brown view controller. And then I'm going to go to my split screen to add some items in here. So in the split screen, I'm going to say for the brown one, I need to have an action for the change it. So I'm going to come in here and say change it has a function or an action called, let's say, change the text function. I add that one. Then I'm going to go to the pink one and say the pink view controller. and obviously the corresponding pink view controller class, I'm going to have an outlet for it that says my label, for instance. So far, we haven't done anything that is completely new. We have done all of these things in the past. And then the next thing that's important is how are we going to make a change here on this label when that button is clicked? And what comes to mind is obviously using a delegate pattern, having a delegation that when this is tapped, that one uses the delegation information to change itself. There is, however, a little bit of a problem with that, and that is so far, whenever we use the delegation pattern, we had a segue between the two view controllers. We had a way that in a prepare for segue, we could, for instance, say the pink view controller dot delegate is equivalent to self of the brown one. But we don't have that in here. Even though we could write the code for it, we don't have a segue directly between these two. And even if we had that, since we never execute the segue, we will eventually never have it actually happening. To demonstrate that, let me actually show you the protocol and how we're going to use it, and then see what problems we run into. I'm going to set a new file. I'm going to say a new Swift file, and this is going to be called my protocol. So that's my protocol. You could essentially call it anything, that the inside of it, the content of it are what matters. So here I'm going to say I have a protocol, and this protocol I'm going to call it changing text in pink delegate. And this one has only one function, and that function is change the text to, and I'm going to have to receive an input text, which is of course I type a string. And since we're in a protocol, we don't need any body of the function, of course. So this is the protocol I want to use. So the way I want to use it is I want to have this as a variable for my pink view controller, and then I want to be able to use it somewhere in my brown view controller. So let's go ahead and do just that. I'm going to go to my pink view controller and say up here I have a variable. I'm going to call it delegate as usual, which is of the type change text in pink delegate. So this is the delegate for my pink view controller, which whoever calls it, they can change the text. Now I'm going to clean everything else that I know I don't need. I'm going to get rid of all of these. I actually don't need the view did load. So the only thing I need are these two outlets essentially. One is the delegate and one is the label. Now let's go to our brown view controller. And if you recall, we always had a situation like this. When the change text was happening, when this action is happening, somehow our pink view controller dot delegate should have called its method, which I don't remember what it was called. The problem is we currently can't do that simply because there is no relationship between the brown one and the pink one. There is no segue between them. So in practice, there is no way for us to get access to this guy. We can't have a pink view controller, which is this pink view controller, the destination of our storyboard. So I could, in theory, do this. I could go ahead and say, let my pink VC become a pink view controller. And then maybe in my view did load, I could go and initialize it. But that will have nothing to do with the pink view controller that is being displayed on the other side of the split view controller. So that is the problem that we are facing right now. And to solve that, I'm going to say, let's do this entire thing with the delegation within another view controller that controls both of these and has a relationship with both of them. And that is a UI split view controller. So I'm going to go back to my brown and clean all of this. I don't need that. And I'm going to start a new file, a Cocoa Touch class, and this is going to be of the type UI split view controller, and I'm going to call this one my split view controller. Now this newly created split view controller doesn't really do anything for us. The only thing it does, it introduces which one is the brown view controller, which one is the pink view controller. So I'm going to go to a storyboard and say this file, this outlet, it actually has a class which is my split view controller. So it now knows all of the connections that are happening here in the interface builder. Then I'm going to head back to my split view controller. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get two variables. One of them is going to be called brown. And my brown is a brown view controller. And then I have a variable pink, and that is a pink view controller, like that. So far in my split view controller, these two are just mere variables. They have no relationship with the destinations of the two segues in my storyboard. So that's something I have to still define it in here, and I do that in my view did load by saying I have brown to be self.view controllers. That's an array of view controllers. The 0th one, that is the master one, as brown view controller. So I'm saying get the brown to be of the type brown view controller from the first view controller of a split view controller, which is true because the very first one is the brown one. Now, for getting the second one with the pink one, we have to do things a little bit differently, because the second one actually is not the pink view controller. Rather, it is a navigation controller. So let's see how I will take care of that. I'm going to go in here and say pink is going to be self.view controllers, the first one, which is the second one essentially. I'm going to get it as a UI navigation controller. I know that's the case. Then from this UI navigation controller, I'm going to say here, get top view controller. I'm going to get that top view controller as a pink view controller. So once again, from the self view controllers, the first one is a navigation controller. That navigation controller, its top view controller is a pink view controller, and that becomes my pink one. Once I have the pink, I could do this, and this is what we have been waiting for. Pink.delegate to here. And since I'm trying to delegate to here, I have to conform to the protocol. I'm going to say the protocol is changing text in pink delegate, and once I conform to it, I have to include the methods of it or stubs from it. And here is that method saying change text to. That's all I have to have in my split view controller. Everything else I can delete, because we don't really, not like that. I can properly delete like that. So now they change the text. What should we do in change the text in here? Remember, this is a function from the delegate. It already knows where it has to apply itself, and that is the pink. So I'm going to say pink dot mylabel dot text becomes whatever value you receive. Now, this is the beauty and the strength of using delegation patterns in iOS, because the split view controller has nothing to do with the pink or its label or even brown or the delegation. It's just a controller for all of these guys. And the relationship between them, once it is set, it essentially allows you to do any kind of communication between all of these different view controllers, which is really, really powerful in many, many situations. So now we have our pink view controller automatically finding the value for its label from the delegation. The problem is nobody so far has called that delegation. And that's the next thing we have to do. We have to go to our brown one and say here, when the function is called, we have to somehow call the delegate from the pink. So let me delete everything else because we don't need any of those guys. In here, we have to call the delegate from pink, but pink isn't even here. Pink is somewhere else in a different view controller called my split view controller. So we have to get it like this. I'm going to say self this view controller dot parent. I'm going to get it parent, and the parent of it, I'm going to get it as my split view controller. So far we found the parent of the brown one. The parent of the brown one, which happens to be this guy, has someone called the pink. So I'm going to go in here and say the parent dot pink. The pink has something called delegate dot delegate. The delegate has some function called change text to. And now we can enter a string, or you can have a text field or anything that you want. I'm just going to manually change it to saying this is sent from brown. Now let's go ahead and run the app and see all of these things in action. I'm going to do a quick recap, and I'm actually going to change something in here just so we can see how it works. So right now, when I tap on the change it, this label should show the message we are trying to send, which is, this is from Brown. It says this is sent from Brown. Now, I'm still seeing that navigation bar over there. That's something I don't want to have because I don't really have a navigation happening in here. So you could actually get rid of that in your pink view controller. You could go in here and say view did load, or actually view will appear would be a better one. View will appear, super.view will appear true, and then in it I'm gonna say self.navigation controller dot navigation bar dot is hidden, and that is true. So the moment the view loads, the moment view will be loading, will appear, I'm going to get rid of the navigation bar to make sure that we don't have that, a space being wasted for no reason. So let's rotate it again, and like that, we have the change it, and that's working like that. Now, I said I want to change something, and that's not really necessary, but I want to show you how it works. I'm going to go to my split view controller, and I'm going to say, we always do the delegation to self. Is there a way to do a delegation to something other than self? And that's absolutely possible. So in this case, I'm going to say pink delegates its tasks to brown. Now, here's what happens. And, if you want to do this, I would suggest that you actually pay attention to it and then try to do it on your own. It is saying that the delegation of pink should go to brown. And obviously it's saying, well, brown is not conforming to that, method. So I'm going to say brown has to conform to changing text in pink delegate, which now that is happening. So in a split view controller, this error is going to go away now. Since I'm delegating to brown now, and the brown is going to take care of the delegation method, then this file, my split view controller, doesn't need to do that. So I'm going to get rid of that. And since this is a function from there, I'm going to get rid of that as well. So once again, now we have the brown and pink, and we find brown and pink, and we say pink delegates to brown. And brown has to take care of everything that is in the delegation, in the protocol. So I'm going to go to brown, and the brown says, well, you're trying to conform to this, but you are not taking care of all the methods. Are you sure you want to do that? And I'm going to say, no, I want to actually have this method. And I'm going to say, in this method, I want to change the text within somebody else. That somebody else, once again, is not here. Is not in the brown, is not even in the brown's parent. It is in the brown's parent's other child, which is this guy. So I'm going to copy that, say self parent as a split view controller dot pink dot my label dot text becomes whatever value we find. So if we run the application, it should work exactly identically to what it used to work just a minute ago. And let's see that. We change, and that works. Now, I know I deviated away from the split view controller, but I found it a good practice for us just to get a sense of none of these things are set on a stone. You don't always have to have your delegation to point to the self, and you don't always have to have the methods in the two view controllers that they have a segue between them. You can, the goal of this course, and essentially the goal of doing a better programming, is getting to know so many different methods so you can mix and match them and find the best solution that you can think of. Going back to the original discussion of this lesson, split view controllers are very useful for situations where you want to control one view controller with another one, primarily used when you have so many items in here, like a table view in an email application, that each of them has a lot of details on the right side of the screen. So we will see that far more in advance and more details when we talk about table view controllers in the next section. But for now, you got a sense of how split view controllers work and how you can essentially benefit from them. And yeah, let's keep it up to here, and I see you in the next lesson.